Okay, everybody, we are live. That was not the intro that I had planned. So it just goes along with the theme of the day. That's okay. Let's get in a better mood, folks. Let's get this thing rocking and rolling. So, guys, if you're watching us, we are streaming live, of course, across multiple platforms. But let's get this out the way. And of course, someone would have to call me in the middle of a live stream. What else? Let's see. Let's have a thunderstorm. That would be wonderful. That would add just to everything that's going on. So real quick, guys, we are streaming live, of course, on multiple platforms. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can check us out on our YouTube channel, guys. We are there at Made from Scratch Broadcast. Is our streaming live there as well. We are working to change a lot of this stuff up. We are rebranding things. So if you're watching on Facebook, guys, you can check us out now at facebook.com/MFSB Live. A little bit quicker, a little bit shorter, rolls off the tongue, so much easier. And of course, the same handle on Twitter. If you're watching on Twitter there as well, you can check us out at MFSB Live on Twitter. Follow us, we'll follow back. You know the drill. So if you're watching there, thank you so much. And of course, we are streaming on Twitch Live, and that's at www.twitch.tv/MFSB Live on Twitch as well. And of course, we are streaming on the magical platform that is LinkedIn. So if you're watching on LinkedIn, guys, thank you so much again. Appreciate every single one of you who follows along. And I think we're going to have a really, really good conversation. So without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and welcome my co-host, first one for the evening, Miss Annie Lieb. How are you doing, darling?
I have never been better. I'm going to tell you right now, everything technologically is just smooth. Everything is just really smooth sailing all day long. It's been great. Everything is just really good. It's great.
It's been a dream, hasn't it?
I am the definition of Anitude right now.
There you go. Awesome. So that's another one. Check out her podcast, guys. That's Living with Anitude. You can find it on Spotify. You can go back and find it on Anchor as well. She records frequent episodes, really good content. So guys, if you're not connected there, go check it out. And of course, let me welcome, of course, to this evening's panel, my friend, Mr. Michael Padurano. Hello, sir. How are you doing this evening?
I'm going to stick to no. I'm going to stick to no comment.
I was going
to. We're all having a kind of day. It's a great day.
It's just one of those days, but you know what? They happen all the time. So it just is.
Yeah, you came really close to making the cherry on top of everything that's gone on. It's been a wonderful sort of thing. But okay, guys.
You know what? We're turning it around, guys. We are
all right. All right. So the topic of this evening that we wanted to discuss, of course, as you can see down on the bottom, down below there it is at #addiction, guys. And that's what we wanted to bring to you this evening. And let's start out the conversation, of course, with what addiction is. So I want to leave that to you. Would you like to handle that, or would you like me to do the introduction? You tell me. What do you want? What do you want to do, Miss Annie?
I mean, I don't have anything in front of me. This is just from my mind. But I will tell you that addiction is a disease, and it can involve. I hear footsteps, by the way. So if one of these little guys prances down here when I ask them not to, that could be something that happens. So you'll just say hello. So it is when you are needing to take a substance or do something or drink alcohol to the point of where it interferes with your daily life, and it makes you not be able to function in your daily life. Now, there are high functioning addicts. There are many different kinds of addictions, and many different kinds of substances, and there's much to talk about, but when it impairs your ability to function in your daily life, that is when you have an addiction problem.
Yeah. So, just kind of the overview that I created for you guys was just a brief summary. Addiction is a complex condition, a brain disease that is manifested by compulsive substance use despite harmful consequences. So people with addictions, severe substance disorders, have an intense focus on a certain substance, such as alcohol, drugs, or to the point that it takes over their lives. So addiction goes beyond just that, of course. Like you said, there's other forms of addiction that you can have. One of the ones that I was studying, it was kind of interesting, that is very different, is cell phone addiction, right? People
technology.
It's it's a different thing. You know, and of course, I had talked about this with my guest on Monday evening about talking about pornography addiction. That's another one. Um, Pornography addiction can really control somebody's mind in the way that they interact in relationships with people. It's I know it's
I think the question is where the mental health, the
mhm.
mental illness intersects with addiction is what interests me the most, and what I think really is like almost the bigger conversation.
Mhm.
Because I have a belief, I know it's not clinically studied, but I have a belief that there is no time when you're addicted to something and you don't have a mental illness.
Well, let me ask,
Go ahead.
not to bug in, but let me ask the panelist on the other side there because he's actually lived addiction. So I'm defining, we're talking about it. Tell us what it is to live it.
Well, I mean, it started out great. I mean,
For a while.
you know, for a little while. For me, it was escapism, right? It was my out. It wasn't that I wanted to feel something. It wasn't that I wanted to feel better. It wasn't that I wanted to. I mean, for me, it was really I wanted to be numb. I wanted to not feel. It was truly an escape from everything that consumed me my whole life. And I
Mike, was
started.
that conscious? Mike, was that conscious? Like you were consciously wanting to escape, or do you think you just did that? And now you look at it now.
I definitely looked for ways to escape. You know, my parents had a full liquor cabinet and they were the ones that always had parties. They were the ones that always had people over. And everybody was always having fun, even the ones that got in trouble driving home, and even the ones, you know, it was common knowledge who had problems and who didn't have problems. And, you know, I mean, it didn't take me long to figure out that, you know, I could put water into white vodka or clear vodka, and I could put water into clear silver rum, and I could put, you know, I could put flat soda into other liquors and mix it with water and make the same colors. And you know, I really became almost a chemist at that point, you know, but I started drinking. My first drink was at 9 years old. Like I wanted out. Like I wanted to not feel.
How did you even know about it? I mean, how did you even know to drink at 9 to numb yourself?
I didn't know. I didn't know what the reaction was going to be. I just knew that it was always around and always available. And I just knew that I wanted to be happy like everybody else was when they were around. And I hear the door creaking, so someone's coming. If I had to guess, it's a 3-year-old.
I already had one standing right here next to me.
Yeah. Yes, Sid.
Awesome.
Yes. Can you go back to the room, baby? Okay. Fair enough.
Fair enough. Right.
So play. Go ahead and play. You know, for me, it was trying it once, enjoying the not feeling, right? Because I wasn't looking for a drunk. I wasn't looking to get that enjoyment that others had. I just wanted to not feel. I didn't care what it took. I just wanted to not feel.
So whatever it took, whatever it
took, didn't really matter. I mean, you know, I was drinking more regular by 11. Before I even smoked pot, I did coke. Then I smoked pot. Then I smoked pot. Then I smoked lace pot, which that was another adventure. Had no idea that it was even laced. I was still drinking, and then it just spiraled. I mean, by the time I was 14, I was already out of control. I mean, I was just a mess.
So what now? So you're 14 years old. You're totally a mess, and I know you, so I know that you're super smart, and I know that you have a really complex. What's that?
Depends on the day.
Depends on the day, but today you are. So I know that you're thinking ahead, and you're an empath. Like you're knowing what's going on a little bit, and you're trying to get clear on things. Where are you at 14? Where's your head? Besides being screwed up.
Just escaping, just not feeling. Honestly, it was numb. Whatever it took to be numb. That's all I wanted. You know, I tried pills. I didn't like pills at all. I just didn't like the feeling. Never did. I always went for uppers, probably because I had undiagnosed ADHD. So it kind of like normalized me in a lot of ways. By the time I was 16 and in high school, I was drinking daily. I was drinking in the parking lot. You know,
Now, were you by
before
yourself?
school.
Were you with friends? Like, did you have a crew, or did you do this by yourself in secret?
It didn't really matter. I mean, if I was in a group, I was the life of the party, and if I was by myself, then I was content. That was the only way I could find contentment. Finding a way to be content with myself, right? Being comfortable in my own skin. And you know, as it progressed over the years, it just got more and more out of control. And then I took a long break from Coke because I actually OD'd in the school at school 3 days in a row from Coke. So I was actually 14 at the time, and I took a long break from Coke. I didn't touch it again until I was 21. I took about 20 actually. I took a long break. And then I
So you were
also,
able to take that break. I mean, you were able to
yeah, but I couldn't
stop
stop
yourself.
drinking. I couldn't stop drinking at the same time.
Okay.
I had to have something
Something
at that.
in your system.
So let me ask you, because a lot of these that I've heard, these situations when I've been to a few of these AA meetings, what was that moment of clarity that says, you know what, I got to stop? Was it rock bottom? Was there just, or did you just make the conscious decision to say, I'm doing it? I mean, that's always interests me, because you get to that point where everybody talks about, hey, it was me waking up in a pool of vomit, or it was me, waking up in a hospital bed not knowing that they're pumping my stomach, or it's something. There's always that catalyst that wants to propel you to want to step away from her. So what was that for you?
I wish I could tell you any of the times that any of those things happened to me that propelled me to stop, but it didn't, right? When I was 17, I went to my first rehab. I went to rehab twice. Once at 17, once when I got sober at the end, and I've been sober since for 14 years, over 14 years. But like, I went to that rehab, and it was only because I got Baker acted for swinging on my psychiatrist. I manipulated
Explain what that means.
I physically attacked my psychiatrist.
But what you just called it.
Baker acted, they gave me an involuntary Baker Act in Florida, and which means that they had a 72-hour hold on me in a psychiatric hospital. But what I did was I manipulated them once I was there to be able to switch it and just explain to them that it was really the drugs doing it and the alcohol doing it, not me. And they believed me, so that was good. And they within 18 hours, I was transferred to a rehab. And I was 17. I'm trying to think. It was about 2 months before my 18th birthday. I did the inpatient and I did the outpatient. I got sober for probably about 6 to 9 months, maybe. Went to AA meetings, was doing the whole thing. That kind of went up in smoke literally when my car got caught, when my car set on fire in the parking lot. But that's a whole nother story for another time. At the AA meeting. That was the last one I went to at that point. So it was just this, at that point I stopped. I had a girlfriend that was still hooked on drugs and worse drugs, heroin at the time, and I helped her go cold turkey off it. And as I was throwing away her stash, I actually got high from it. So at that point, I went right back to drinking, because why not? And then I continued to go that spiral until I got sober I'm trying to think, it was 2006. So right after my 27th birthday. It was June 19th, 2006, which was Father's Day. And I didn't have this beautiful waking up moment. It was, I woke up, I told my parents, I'm not celebrating Father's Day. I've got to take care of some stuff. And I started calling every single police station of every city I was in the night before. Had no recollection of where I even was until I went through the receipts and where my credit card was charged. And actually was going to turn myself in if I harmed somebody because there was damage on my car. That's how messed up I was between the cocaine and the alcohol. I definitely did enough probably to kill any normal human being without a doubt. And at that point, I made a pact with God, whatever my higher power of my understanding was. And I said, if you keep me sober, I will do whatever it takes to help as many people in this world as humanly possible. and that's a pact that I live through till today. And yes, I went to rehab. I went to a dual diagnosis. I went to therapy. I worked on all the surface issues. I did my steps. I was in the rooms. I did all those things. I was in the rooms for a good 2.5, 3 years. I worked at the Drug and Alcohol Rehab Center after that for 3 years. And I was very involved in that community. And then for me and my personality, it became a toxic environment. It works for other people, but for me, it became a toxic environment. And I stepped away from the rooms and found other ways to help people.
Yeah, because again, that's one of the, just asking out of how effective is using 12-step programs and that sort of thing, because I've been to a couple of these again. And just real quick, I went to one, shout out to Eddie Dean. He invited me to one called Souls Harbor, where it was a real eye-opening experience before all the COVID-19 hit. I just wanted to see what that life was and what it was that he did. So he did have a different approach of how he taught. But again, I think it was, go ahead, Mike.
So here's my opinion, right? And this is just my opinion, so take it for what it's worth. Without doing the steps and doing the work, I would never be sober today. And I firmly believe that.
And again,
but I was also ready. So that's a difference also.
Of course.
And I wasn't there to get laid. I wasn't there to hook up. I wasn't there to play games. You know, I wasn't there to take advantage of people. I was truly done.
You turned the will over, right? You turned it over, as they say.
Right.
You turned it
over.
I
100%. 100% turned it over.
Because I understand it's very difficult to do that sometimes, even when you say that you're at that point ready. Just simply what I mean by that is, of course, these guys are in there. They're working very hard. They're showing up. They're doing whatever they're supposed to, taking the drug tests that they need to do to stay in the program. They're doing all of this stuff here, and yet they give the sobering image behind you. Say, look, guys, there's a wall behind us. These are guys who didn't make it. These are people that didn't make it. I mean, so that's a very eye-opening sort of fuck. You know, I don't mean to be that blunt, but it is very sobering. And I've never had the thing, but I wanted to get a better understanding of people. This is where I started doing this and wanting to go to some of these things to see what it is. And when
I commend you for doing that. I commend you, because many people just chalk it up to what they've seen on TV and in movies. And my opinion is that I'm a firm believer that what Mike just said is totally correct. And that if you don't work some type of program, if you don't, that I have a really hard time believing you just it's called white knuckling it when you just say, I'm going to do it on my own. I don't think you're working through the things that you have to work through in the 12 steps are the things that get you to your bare bones, that allow you to turn over your power. And when you turn over your power, when you give that up, when you relinquish that, that's when you get strong. But you have to be, like they say, rock bottom. That's a term that's thrown around loosely. But there's a place, I think, where you reach, where you say, I am going to die. They say that's in the program. Okay. 3 things: jails, institutions, and death. Okay. You're either going to go to jail, you're going to go to an institution, or you're going to die. So the people that want to get sober accept that to be their truth. This is the deal. It's not, I'm going to cut down. It's not, I'm going to try harder. It's not, I'm stronger than this. Watch my willpower. Because then you're just a dry drunk. So I would love for somebody to tell me that they don't believe in the program. People don't make it. There are always people that don't make it. And that's terribly sad. And that's a motivator to me.
It's just the facts of life sometimes.
It's the facts of life. I believe that if you follow those steps the way that they propose them, and you got to find the right meeting, you got to find the right people. You're in your bare bones state, and you have to be vigilant about finding your people and going to the meetings and getting a sponsor. So asking a sponsor, which is somebody that's basically a stranger, for so, you know, that to really be, and you got to reach out, you got to pick up the phone and call people, and you have to connect. And these are all things that you're scared to do sober.
I think this is why this is one of the most interesting experiences that I had there, because the gentleman who teaches a class there, first of all, I'll shout out to again, his name is Eddie Dean. He is a big time caterer here. I mean, he is a multi-millionaire. This guy is a multi-millionaire who's served all the all the gubernatorial balls here since the last 20 years. So he's got his own establishment. He goes out of the kindness of his heart to go there and help these guys not only learn about the 12 steps, but he also brings in the coaching of what I didn't know it at the time, but he was essentially teaching them neuroplasticity.
Mm.
It's a whole different thing.
It's rewiring. You have to rewire your brain because
I got a video. He's got a bike there. It's rigged. It's rigged that this mind won't be able to ride it. I know. I tried. I got on it. You have to rewire he got on it. He rode it like nothing.
Wow.
He has rewired his brain to ride that bike, and that's the logic behind of what he teaches. It's the same thing. I didn't know, again, like I didn't know it at the time, but that's what he's teaching a lot of these guys. It's neuroplasticity and what you can do to get it. Yeah. So he's on LinkedIn, guys. So I'll put his link in there as well, because I was very appreciative of the times that I went over there and got to be a part of that. That was pretty.
I think you touched on something important, which is, you know, that drug and alcohol does not discriminate.
Nope. And
I mean, people that don't know, I think often look at, oh, well, I can't go. I'm not one of them. I'm not like that. You know, I'm not, you know, I'm not in the street shooting up, or I'm not drinking in the car before work. I'm not an alcoholic. Well, I think that if your relationships in your life, whether it be with work or your spouse or your children or whatever it may be, and you take a look at those and things are being affected because of your drinking or drug abuse, then there's something going on there. It doesn't discriminate. You can be a gajillionaire. It doesn't matter. There is no one of them. You are one of them. We're all, you know, I mean, so, I mean,
and it's true. I've seen working, functioning alcoholics in my life. I mean, my uncle's one. He's been drinking for the longest time. Guess what? This guy goes to work. This is my narcissistic uncle, by the way. He gets up, he goes to work, he runs. Listen to this. He runs 3 miles a day.
And he's an alcoholic?
And he's an alcoholic.
So he gets up and he's shaking from booze?
Every night. 12-pack. Bammo. Bammo. I remember. And he wouldn't drop his beer when we would sit there. We were watching baseball on TV as a youngster. I can remember this being about 15 or 16. Why would I go over there? Because he had beer and he says, "Oh, here's one, guys. Have one." You know. But he would never, even sitting there watching it, whatever, he'd doze off, never dropped his beer.
Most important thing.
The most important thing, right? Even now, I say this man should be the most physically fit person that I know. Yet he's not, because he can't let go.
Well, that's his security blanket. That's what he knows. That's comfortable for him. But can we just go back to Mike for 1 sec? Because I don't want to get away from.
Yes, go ahead, Mike.
From your story.
Please.
Do you want a question? I have plenty.
Sure, ask a question.
So
ask anything.
You obviously didn't have support around you that you needed. You didn't have guidance and support. I mean, there was many things happening, correct?
Okay, so first of all, I was very good at hiding it, right? I was, you know, at a young age, I was pretty successful. I did well for myself. In school, I was able to hide it for the most part. I was a great manipulator. I was great at lying. I was great at taking advantage of. I was great at the stories, right? Like, I mean, that's all part of it, right? And I believed in myself, so it's not like I was, you know, just saying things. I mean, I honestly believe these things. And I always thought that I was doing no harm to anybody else, right? Like, for me, as long as I didn't hurt anybody else, I didn't care what I did to myself. and the door opened again.
That's the root of it, right?
What? There's no birthday cake. Your birthday was like a month ago.
Like, where's it at?
Oh,
Why are you hiding it, man?
seriously, I'm holding it in a container.
Yeah,
Like they didn't
what are
eat
you
the whole
doing?
cake in a day and a half.
Yeah.
Look, it's deeper than that, and it's bigger than that. I mean, my parents tried to help me to the best of their ability. You know, they got me into that rehab that first time at 17. You know, they wanted to help me. They helped me get to the AA meetings. They supported that movement. They supported. You know, it's one of those things that it was very difficult for them to grasp that they couldn't help me in that way. You know, and I was in therapy at young ages. I went to psychiatrists at young ages because, you know, if AA was my only issue or drinking and drugs was my only issue, it would have been great. So,
Well, that's exactly what I was trying to get at. I mean, when do you think
100.
like when was something wrong? You know, did people start to realize, or when did that intersection happen would be my question.
When you say wrong, I mean, okay, so let's break down wrong, right? So when you're talking about wrong, what exactly wrong do you mean? Like, when did I start going to therapy? When did I start?
Well, okay, so that's true. There's a couple questions there. So you obviously didn't wake up one day and say, I need to go to therapy. So your parents saw something, somebody saw something, and they said, this kid's got to go talk to somebody.
It was pretty obvious. Yeah, there was no hiding that. I mean, yeah, no, I was the kid in class that was the class clown. I was the underachiever. I was the one that always was the troublemaker, always getting in trouble.
So they didn't know what to do with you.
No, I was a handful. I mean, I was, you know, and I got my payback. So my mom was right about that one. You know, you're gonna have one like yourself one day, and I got it. So actually, I have 3 now. So yeah, so you can have your choice of the day. But it was deeper than that. It was more than that, right? There was underlying emotional issues, whether it was from when I was adopted, and I never really understood or accepted that. Then my parents had a natural born child, so maybe I felt insecure about that. Maybe it was the verbal abuse that I had as a child when my mother was off her rocker nutty because of thyroid or whatever else was wrong with her. Maybe it was a combination of every single thing that you can imagine leading up to that point. And I don't know if I can pinpoint one thing. I just know that, you know, I was a very emotional, I was a crier. I was a very,
You were a deep feeler as a young kid.
Yeah, and acted out like crazy. I mean, I was the troublemaker in class without ever hurting anybody else. Just
so, did you ever do you know who well, you said you were adopted, right?
Yeah, at birth.
At birth, did you know you ever knew who your real parents were? You ever figure that out?
My real parents are the ones that raised me.
So he can't he can't trace that.
Well, because the reason I was asking it, because again, I'm in this book called Switching on Your Brain by Dr. Caroline Leaf, and she was talking about epigenetics, predisposition, and again, it's a little bit different, but it's a subject matter that's really interesting because it talks about the chemical breakup and makeup of this. These things can be passed on. Transgenerational trauma can be passed on before birth. I'm just putting this out there because it's a different concept to think about what we're talking about when you're talking about addiction.
Both. I mean, there's definitely you can't. I want someone to prove me wrong, that they're going to tell me that it's not generational and there's a predisposition and there's a mental health component and there's, you know, what you're around in your environment and everything that's imposed upon you and the way you're treated as a child and the things you experience. It's a combination of everything. You don't choose it. I'll tell you that. You don't choose it.
No.
Yeah. So and that's all. And that's what I was bringing it up for, because again, it's something to think about because.
But I'm 48. I'm 41. I've been sober for 14 years. I don't care. I just don't care. Like, it's a little late in the game to worry about what's handed down to me.
Well, I mean, of course, I understand that, but there's some people that might be watching this searching as well. I mean,
and not only that, Mike, you have to care because, and you do, which I know.
I know you do, but this is,
because you're gonna. There's definite genes that are getting passed on to them. They're gonna be. They're much more likely to be addicts. So
no. That part I get. But as
Yes.
far as it relating to me and
Sure.
where I've
Okay,
already been,
oh,
it's
where
a
you
little
got
late
it.
in the game.
Of course.
And I don't think
But I just,
tracing it back behind me makes a difference anymore,
I
right?
don't think it is. But I wanted to lay the groundwork for other people, though. And this is what
100%.
I'm saying, because people are gonna, what works for Mike Padron will not work for everybody else.
Oh
And
God, no.
that's essentially what I'm just saying, is that every avenue, every resource, every angle has to be researched and looked at when you're talking about something like this. Because again, if the goal is to help somebody find their path to sobriety, whatever it is, you have to look at every option. I mean, it's like a cancer patient when it's about to die. If my goal is to live, I look at every motherfucking option there is to see if there's anything that has not been checked. That's just me, and that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that it's that's everybody's journey is different. Of course, everybody's got
So here's my opinion, coming from somebody who has adopted, somebody that's gone through addiction, somebody that had a not as an ideal childhood, and then became the troublemaker, became the squeaky wheel, became all those things, and made those decisions to do that, because I figured over time that was the only attention I was going to get. And my poor sister, yes, she got a lot more lenient punishments, but I always got the attention because I made sure of it, right? And looking back, I took the lion's share of that. I feel like at any point during that childhood, if I would have done research on my biological parents, I don't think it would have changed a thing. I've got to be honest. At that, it wouldn't have changed for me personally. It wouldn't have changed it.
Yeah.
Because it didn't matter to me. It never was a mental issue, or it wasn't a surface issue, right? Just like when I got sober, I only took care of my surface issues. That's my mistake. I refuse to deep dive. I mean, I'm 41 and now starting to deep dive, right, to get to my real root issues. Like, it took 14 years sober to dig into my real root issues.
Yeah.
And to be honest with myself about those issues and the decisions that I made and the decisions that were out of my control, and to really accept it and be able to move forward from it. It wasn't a conscious thing. It was a subconscious decision to bury it. And even when I got sober, it wasn't. What really has kept me sober was, one, my relationship with a higher power, because I made that pact. I told God to kill me on the spot if I didn't stay sober. And I firmly believe that. That's one. Two, I always help people. I go out of my way to help people any way I can. I'm always doing the 12-step in one way or another. Maybe not traditional by the book as far as AA and the big book and all those things go, but I am always trying to help somebody else, no matter what it is. And that's the only way I've stayed sober all these years. I'm 100% convinced of that. That's what works for me. It doesn't work for everybody.
Interesting. No, that's what you talk about when you talk about talking about the experiences, talking about the journey. Somebody somewhere along the line is at their breaking point, and
I just want them to feel like if you're questioning where you are with things, if you're wondering, or if someone has taken you aside and said, do you have a problem? Are you okay? Or you find yourself sort of like obsessing over the substance, the alcohol, or gee, I know you don't have an addiction. You don't have addiction in you. I at least from what I've heard you say. Have you ever been like so obsessed with something that like every decision that you make is based on that? Like, and I'm not saying this is an addiction. I'm just saying, like, if you can think of a time when you were so obsessed with something in your life that you got so hyper focused on it. It could be a good thing. It could be running. It could be, if you think about
that. That's a really tough question.
Like where it like sort of it came into every thought. What am I going to do?
Here, okay. If there was something like that, it was when I would get in relationships. I would go above and beyond. because I thought that's what was supposed to be done. I learned the hard way that it doesn't work that way.
Well, it's actually a type of addiction called codependency. But codependency doesn't mean what a lot of people think. People think that means like needy and like clingy on people, and that you're dependent on someone else. It doesn't mean that. Mike, we're talking about codependency.
I heard.
It doesn't necessarily mean that. It means that there's almost an unhealthy link between you and that person. Like you put that person before you all the time. And every single decision that you make is based on how it affects that person and how that person affects you. And yes, there's partnership, and there's a fine line between having a partner and a person and a love and connection. And then there's codependency. And that is a type of addiction in a way, because you get almost obsessed and hyper-focused on somebody. And then that's all that there is in your life. So if you've had that, the reason I'm bringing it up is then you do understand sort of what it feels like.
Yes. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Perfect sense. Makes a lot of sense. So that's...
Sorry about that. My 3-year-old claimed that she was on a live call too, so she had to get the center of attention.
That's okay. We take all comers here.
Her, the kitty, and her baby.
No, but that's a good point to kind of put it into.
If someone can try to understand that.
Yes, other than saying, well, I've never tried drugs or alcohol, because I've done alcohol and never did drugs, but alcohol was just like everybody, socially. Hey, here, there, have a drink here, have a drink there.
If you drank one night and you drank a real lot and you had a big hangover the next day.
Here's the thing. Like, there was at a period where I could have seen myself becoming down that path. Me and my brother, I think I had just turned 21. I was buying obscene amounts of gin, and we would drink 2 cups every night before we went to bed. We did this for like 7 months. And I think what was the thing that kind of sparked us to kind of stop was, at the time I was still living with my father. So he comes in and he finds all the bottles and the damn thing. My father was vehemently against drinking. So he kind of saw that, was shocked, told us he was disappointed. And I guess that kind of fucking just said, okay, cool, I'm not going to do it anymore.
Well, yeah, that would lead me down the path of believing that you don't have an addiction problem.
Yeah,
no.
At all.
That was partying. That was partying a little bit.
Yeah, I mean,
I think.
I think what it was is, though, I did like the feeling, though, tonight to go, okay, cool, let's have 2 glasses of orange juice. Let's have 2 glasses of orange juice and gin tonight. Call it a night.
Can do that. Some people can do that, and that's fun, and that's okay. And as long as you're not getting behind a wheel,
let's. And it got to, but again, that was never. I don't think I was ever that close. But I could see where you could go that path where you start feeling that comfortableness where you want to do it all the time.
Or where you need. There's a difference between wanting and needing. Right. So it starts, I think, with a want, or you don't even know you want it. You just, like Mike said, you numb, and it really feels good to feel numb, because to not have those painful feelings is really nice. Right. And you're covering that up, and it's really nice. And like everybody else around you is doing it. Everybody, people are doing drugs, people are drinking, everybody's chilling. Right. But the problem is when it's all you think about, and you don't have to get up in the morning and drink to be an alcoholic.
No,
You don't have to do that. So people's view, I think, sometimes is off on what addicts look like.
Yeah, because again, the reason I've talked like what different sorts of addiction, like I think David has mentioned he had a pornography addiction for a while. And I even talked to Eric, who was on the show Monday. I said, well, how do you approach that? I mean, using the techniques that you're talking about,
that's a whole different um, that's a whole different level of addiction. I mean, it does still with the mind, but how you approach each one and how, because again, you got to take those images out of somebody's head, or find a way to at least.
That's a serious mental health component. So,
Yes.
and that's a compulsion, and it's not a different level as far as worse, better.
Oh, of course.
It's not. It's just. I mean, you have to, if it's interfering with your life to where you're doing that during work, or it's interfering first of all, that's a whole other topic, but a sex addiction, porn addiction, I mean, I can talk about this for days, but there's a block of intimacy there. So that's a whole other mental health component that is for another podcast. But if you feel you have that addiction, there are plenty of people that have that issue, and it can be overcome. It's not easy. None of this is easy. This is really hard stuff. And you really have to have some awareness and take a real deep look at yourself to really admit it and say, I do have a problem. Because you want to be just like everybody else, And I think that, with a porn addiction, it's really hard, because I think, then has to be, you could put locks on your computer, like locks on websites, and it's just but that's how alcoholics feel, because it's everywhere. It's not like cocaine where you have,
unless you're in South Florida.
Well, exactly. If you're in South Beach, that's a little different. But, if you're in like Philly, right? Like, alcohol's all around. People are out, people are drinking. Now there's people doing drugs. Yeah. But porn is so accessible, and it's so easy, especially nowadays, that you might not realize you even have an issue, but it doesn't have to be the guy that's sitting in his room for 7 hours straight, jacking off. Porn addiction can be different than that. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be that.
Hey,
I want people.
I got to tell you something though. If that guy's doing it for 7 straight hours, I got to commend him. He's a badass.
I mean,
I got to say, I hope he's ambidextrous. If he's not, we've got issues. We've got issues.
Serious issue. Yeah, serious.
Maybe the Eagles should draft him as a quarterback.
All right, he gets a medal from both you guys. Okay, this guy I'm talking about. But I'm telling you, this does go on, but it doesn't have to be like that. It can be to where, whatever. So the point is, if you think that it's interfering with your life, whatever that addiction is that you are feeling is taking you over, I would say reach out and get help. But if you're embarrassed to do that or something, maybe go to a meeting. And if you don't feel comfortable doing that, do some reading on it, because if you can give something up and not have it really affect you, you're not obsessed with this thing that you're missing, then maybe you don't have a problem. But, and some people can steer themselves on the right track, but it's rare.
True.
Well, and for me, right, I'm still an addict. I'm an addict for the rest of my life.
No, you're always an addict.
I'm going to be I am an addict for the rest of my life.
Yep.
And, I'm a workaholic. I've shifted it that direction at times. Now I'm a single parent-aholic, but that's not really by choice, more by necessity. But I know that there's things I can and can't do, right? And don't get me wrong, I go to bars and I watch football games. I go to bars and watch sports. I go eat at restaurants that sell alcohol. I even go to clubs sometimes to listen to bands and music. But I also know that when what I want to go there for is done, I don't stay. Right? That there's no reason for me to be there anymore. I can go and not want to drink and not want to, do those things, not want to party, not want to play those games, and that's fine. But I also know when I'm not there for that reason anymore, and I can't go for, one of those triple header football days, right? Like when it's the UK game, then it's the early game, late game, or even quadruple header when they have the night game, right? I can't stay at a bar for 12 hours. It just, not that it would make me want to drink. I just know that I would mentally and personally be uncomfortable after a while.
Yeah.
So,
and there's no reason to put myself in that position.
Agreed. We just had a comment, a woman, Cheryl, actually that's my mother. So I wanted to shout out to my mom, who just jumped on and said something. She said,
Hi,
in my
Mom.
experience, when life becomes unmanageable, you're an addict, simple as that. And it really is as black and white as that. And it's exactly what I've been saying, which is, first of all, with Mike, I want to touch on what you were just mentioning, triggers. So there's certain things that get you triggered, whereas you know your limits. And this is a long time of you being sober. So you know sort of where you are with that, and you've worked the program and you've worked the steps. For somebody that's newer at it, you know, running out to bars when you have an alcohol addiction probably isn't the best way to go. But she's exactly right. That's when you know, when things have become unmanageable and they are intersecting and interwoven with everything that you're doing and your relationships, and you're lying. Addicts lie a lot. And Mike, you said it best when you said you believed your own lies.
100%.
When you're in an active addiction, you don't like set out to lie and manipulate people. You know, like you believe
50-50. I mean,
I don't think unless evil, you don't wake up and say, I'm going to screw over A, B, and C today. Like it's not, but like you don't, I think personally that you lose your ability to sort of have that care and consciousness around it and conscience around it. So you start to tell lies, and then you start to believe them, because all that matters to you is whatever your drug is or your booze. That's all that matters. And it's really, really sad and scary. So if anybody's there, please, if your life is unmanageable, please reach out.
Reach out to me. I'll put you in the right direction that people that are active involved. I mean, I'll help anyone, whatever, you know, whatever it takes.
It's so prevalent. And especially like with COVID, I can't imagine the amount of, we were talking about domestic violence earlier, but the amount of, do you think that, you know, I talked to somebody from, as a business discussion from Recovery Centers of America, and she said that things had really slowed down. And I was wondering, like, do you think that because people can't really get their drugs as easily because of the quarantine, or you think more people are drinking?
Oh God, yeah. And drugs are more prevalent than ever. And drugs are more prevalent than ever. I promise you. That's
less likely to go to rehab then, obviously.
Yes, that's stimulus, because they're not leaving the house. They're not getting the DUIs. They're not getting the public intoxications. They're not going, you know, they're not getting into the legal system, which forces a lot of people to address those issues.
Not to mention the mental health aspect of COVID, right?
Well, I mean, that's a whole other thing, right? Like that's driving people into deep depressions because they're losing jobs. Sometimes the unemployment's not coming through. Their money's not coming in. They're going through their savings. Their kids don't know what to do. Their kids are home, right? So it's all these different circumstantial things that are just piling up and creating this massive time bomb in their life.
It's really sad and scary.
It is. And just like the lawyer the other day, Gabe, I don't remember his name for the life of me because I'm bad with names, but he was talking about the child abuse, right? I mean, about hitting home.
Chris DeBari is his name. So if you're not familiar with him, guys, because that was a very interesting topic when we were talking about that because of the effects of COVID-19.
Yeah.
And I even asked Joe about that tonight, because I asked him about, have you seen spikes in phone calls? I mean, because again, you're working at a 911 operate. That's going to be the first line of defense. That's where you're going to see a lot of statistics on certain aspects of, hey, we're seeing a lot more of this. We see a lot more of this, because they're the first ones. They get the reports. They see the statistics. They know what they're dealing with, because they have to adjust to what's going on, because that's what they did with COVID when they first started. How to question somebody doing COVID-19. But how many people have called in? It goes, even dealing with domestic abuse, child abuse. Even knows, he said, yes, straight up. He told me, we've seen a spike in numbers in that.
But also keep in mind, there's many reasons for that, right? Because
of course
the abusers hit at work, hit at other places. They weren't around as often. Maybe they went to bars, maybe they went out afterwards. And now everyone is trapped in the house, right? And the vices and the outs and all those excuses are now gone. The safe havens are gone for those that were getting abused, assaulted, and hurt. And
they're about to spike again.
And well, I got a lot of news for you. It's a lot more prevalent than even what's being the spike, because now people are more scared because there is nowhere for them to go. So in what world does somebody want to be that person that calls whoever on it and has nowhere to go? because
Right.
you can't go to hotels because those were closed for a long time. You couldn't go to shelters and things like that because a lot of them were closed. It became a point where you literally were trapped. And that wasn't just in their mind anymore. Like Bella's conversation last Friday, right? Like it wasn't in their mind. This is a real trap now,
Mhm.
and the police force, because of other issues and everything else that is going on in first responders, they don't have the manpower to respond to these calls. And where are they putting all these people? Because the courts are closed.
Well,
So it's not like,
that's part of what
yeah,
he was kind of. That's kind of what we were alluding to, was the fact that, hey, we have to go through this process of kind of, because people call in and they say, I might have COVID-19, right? So if it's necessary or unnecessary for them to go to the hospital, that's for something to them to kind of figure out. That way, because here's the thing, if they send somebody there who doesn't have it and recommend it to them and they catch it, well, then you've affected somebody's life. So that's why the questioning process, what they go through, he goes, we've seen the spike in the amount of time we spend on the phones dealing with this, because we have to go through the protocol to ask these questions with people. I mean, that's why I said there were so many different things I took from that conversation that was interesting, because it dealt with everything. And that's why, even what we're talking about now, some of those things are relatable. Talking about being trapped in a home, figuring out what it is.
Hi, Sid. Look at the face.
Yeah, she's like, hey,
She's like,
America.
here I am. I mean,
England.
she brings a nice bright face to a dark subject.
Yes, it does.
I guess, I guess what I would say is, I guess what I would say is, I think it's really important to just find someone to talk to, find a person to talk to, find somebody to confide in. And you can find a lot of those people at meetings really want to help you. Like, they might seem cliquey, but they really want to help you. And you have to just reach out, because I don't want you to die. And I don't want you to go to an institution. I don't want you to, I don't want you to go to jail.
I think
I
that's
don't
the
want
goal.
that.
The goal is to save as many lives as possible. I mean, this is why, again, the mission, what we start, what we're talking about, it can help one person, man. That's
how do we help more? What should we do? I mean, how do we help more?
Well, here's the thing, right? Action will take a lot. Joe kind of laid this out for me and gave me a really good perspective. He said, you know what I did? He goes, I don't like to talk about this, but I'm going to tell you right now. He goes, I wanted to go make a difference out in my community. So I went and picked 10 charities and I went and donated time.
It is time.
It's not money. The greatest currency.
That helps too, but your time is what is healing for both sides.
Right. And that's what you can spend when you want to go out there and make a difference. That's what I mean when I say make a difference, is go out there, take the time. I mean, it's amazing what people will do and what things happen when you take the time to sit down and have a conversation with somebody. When you do the things that you're talking about, again, even what we're going to discuss next week, taking the time to go out and finding ways that you can help somebody out.
Well, they call them in the program, it's called service. So that's why there's always, like, you're supposed to find, there's different jobs that you can get within the program. So, and that's part of the reason, is because it's very healing to do the work and to sort of get down to your bare bones and stack chairs, or clean up the coffee, or whatever the case may be. Giving back your time really gets you down to reality, versus when you're living in this drug or booze bubble that you're, no pun intended, and you're, sort of living in this fake world, versus, getting down and saying, I was doing this in life, and now I'm down here scrubbing the floors, and life is a little bit different than it used to be. So let's talk about reality, right?
Yeah. No, but okay. True.
So
Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
if I can make it, sorry, I know that I keep getting thrown out or whatever. I keep dropping out, and Sid's kind of attacking.
Okay, let's go ahead and start wrapping this up a little bit and get
Oh
going.
yeah.
So here's the thing, right? When it comes to that service, that's okay. When it comes to service, it's basically training extremely selfish addicts to learn to give back. Right?
Thank you for putting that eloquently. I couldn't get out.
But look, I'm as blunt as it comes, and everybody that knows me knows that. The reality is, when you are an addict and everything else, you are as selfish as humanly possible.
It's all about you and all about booze.
Right. So that's the first rule of breaking you, right? It's getting you to understand and feel. It's not only about breaking that selfishness, it's also about making you feel the good side of giving back, right? To filling that void.
Because I mean, we're gonna come back to this topic again because there's still a lot of more that we haven't even reached deep down with, because there's also the effects an addiction has on other people.
Yeah, we have another show or two to do on this.
We got another show or two of this, and I know because I know that these are topics we didn't touch on, but there's so many different aspects about what we want to do when we're talking about helping people out, right? We want to, and this is why I want to keep doing this into a few more episodes because I think it goes a little bit deeper. I think we just scratched the surface of.
We need a couple more.
What this is. And how difficult.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing your story, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Mike.
That was great.
Time. I'll try and get the 3-year-old to be in bed next time, but
we should show like 1 a.m.
Because again, I think going into the next one, I want to see if I can find another brave soul.
I think we know of a couple too. Yeah.
To.
I know of quite a.
Well, if you could reach out to him, because again, it's always different to talk about it and then have somebody talk about the experience of it. You got to take it for both, to compare and contrast both of them, because again, it's like dealing with psychology. It's one thing to be schizophrenic. It's one thing to talk about it. So this is what I would love to understand more about the role of addiction. And I know it sounds funny, but
hugely.
Huh?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would love to talk about this more. I really would. I think that we have just barely scratched the surface. And so maybe we can do a hashtag addiction too.
Yes. So going forward, we'll do another one of these and then we'll plan it to put it together. So, on that note, everybody, if you have not known, I've done already 2 hours of live streaming. What a day. And I got another 2 more tomorrow, but I love what I do.
Such a good attitude.
I love what I do, even despite everything that could possibly go wrong. At the end of the day, this is what I take away from every single one of these conversations. It really does put perspective back in my life.
Thank you to everybody that listened and came in and commented. We got comments the whole time. Really appreciate that. And you boys, I love you. You have my heart. So
thank you so much. All right, everybody. I will be back tomorrow evening with my guest, Michelle Seedling. We will be talking about nutritional health and lifestyle changes. And then before that, I will be actually going on with Mila Deschamps, and we will be talking about systemic racism, something that I like talking about. So I got a back-to-back tomorrow, pretty heavy. And then Friday, we will be having Mike and myself on, and we will be having a conversation with Matt Gagnon. So,
all right, kids.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Say good night.
Good night.
Say good night. Good night, Raquel.
Good night, Raquel.
All right.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye, everybody.
I love that one for sure.
Bye.